Good afternoon and welcome to a workshop for the Oak Harbor City Council. Today is June 29th. It is 2 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This will be both a physical meeting location and a virtual meeting. Some members of City Council and staff are participating via teleconference. Guests that are included in staff presentations will be excused from the Ring Central meeting at the conclusion of the agenda item as appropriate. Today's meeting may be viewed live via YouTube and on cable channel 10 HD 1090. As a reminder, city offices and facilities will be closed on Monday, July 4th, in observance of Independence Day. I encourage all to enjoy this time with your families and friends. The Chamber of Commerce has some wonderful events planned, including a parade and fireworks display. See their website for more details. And council members who wish to participate in the parade are invited to ride on one of the city fire trucks if you so choose. Thank you, Chief, for that. As we have items for potential action on the workshop agenda today, I will ask our city clerk to call the roll at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Munns. I can see that Mayor Pro Tem Munns is in the meeting. Mayor Pro Tem Munns, you're muted. We'll come back to you, Mayor Pro Tem Munns. You may need to use the telephone that you're also logged in on. Councilmember Heisen.
Present.
Councilmember Wiesner.
Present.
Councilmember Stuckey.
Present.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Present.
Councilmember Evans.
Present.
Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Munns, I'd like to try it again to see if we can hear you. You may have to adjust the volume on the iPad. Mayor, I can verify that Mayor Pro Tem Munns is in the meeting. I just want to make sure that we can hear her.
Sure, okay. It's really frustrating.
There you are. Thanks very much. We still can't hear you.
Not getting that part to work. Okay.
We have her logged in on the phone as well.
Okay. Well, we've got her. She can hear us. I can pretty well tell that. We can see her, so it's frustrating when you can't get the sound going. Oop. Nope. Still
Nope.
not.
Nope. Oh, there we are. Yes, I can hear you now.
Hello?
Yep. Now
Yep.
it's working.
We hear you now.
You just turn one of the speakers off, though, so it's not the echo.
Right. So, Mayor Pro Tem, if you'll turn one speaker off, then that way you won't get that screechy echo.
She's got tech support.
Very good. Mayor, all members of council are present.
Super. Thank you, Clerk Lindsay. I'd like to note that, as stated on our workshop agendas, public comment is not normally allowed at workshop meetings, although council may allow or request participation if they so choose. The City Council and my office received a number of emails regarding both the canceled special meeting of June 27th and this meeting. All were shared with the City Council in advance of this meeting. So I think then at this time, we'll move to the first item on our agenda, which is Legal Department. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to
Councilor
make a
Evans.
motion to move action item, periodic review of the Mayor Pro Tem, to the first item on the agenda.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to move the action item under City Council A, action item periodic review, to the first item on our agenda today. Motion and a second. Any questions or input? Yes, Councillor Stuckey.
I think if we're going to do that, we need to make sure that Mayor Pro Tem's technology is working. Can she try again with her audio? Can you hear us, Mayor Pro Tem? We need to be able to hear you, though.
We can't hear. Okay. Yes, Mr. Holborn?
We do have legal counsel lined up to go. If this item goes too long, they may not be available if this item runs as number second. I'm just letting you aware of that. We'll do our best to accommodate. but
Okay, they're here now, is what you said.
They're here online now, but they may not be available if this item is not first.
Oh, okay.
The legal item is not first.
So that's another reason to go ahead and do this.
It's your guys' call. I'm just
Yeah.
letting you know.
Okay? So she can hear us. Can we hear Mayor Pro Tem? We can't hear.
Mayor, did you for the next item, for the public levy, we have attorneys there for that one, and that's what I was referring to.
Oh, I see.
And if you
Okay.
don't do that item first, I don't know whether they're going to be available or not. That's the reason
Okay.
why we have it.
Back to Councillor Evans.
Well, let's just cut to the chase then. Number one, I don't think we should even be having this proceeding without Mayor Pro Tem Munns present in chambers. I think that this is ridiculous that we would do this while she's out of town. I'm embarrassed to be a part of it. We've got numerous people that are here, I know, are here to speak on this matter. So I would like to make the public comment available so we can hear those people. But I will change my motion and withdraw my motion that I previously made. And I will issue a new motion to strike this item from the agenda until Councilmember Munns returns.
So if we're going to strike the first motion, I think we have to strike the second, which would be, okay, we'll consider that.
Withdrawn.
And then the first motion has been withdrawn. And now the second motion is to strike that item from the agenda, action item from the agenda completely. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to strike action item, periodic review of the Mayor Pro Tem from the agenda today. Any questions about that motion? Input? Yes, Councillor Hoffmeyer.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what all the facts on this item are, but I think if the administration feels that it is serious enough that we need to hear from them, I would certainly not be comfortable striking it without all the facts.
Councillor, yes, Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not looking to strike the item entirely. I think this is something that needs to be discussed. However, in fairness to any staff member, whether it be council member or any of our employees, I think in order to do this, it's best to do it with the person present in order to be able to defend themselves. And clearly we're having communication issues, and this is not the best way to communicate anyhow. And so I'm not saying that this is not something that we do need to discuss later down, but I think it is something that's best done when Mayor Pro Tem has opportunity to be here in person to speak to it.
Okay, Councillor Stuckey.
I agree with Councilmember Marshall, but I just want to make sure, is there any reason we're not aware of the urgency of this matter while is there any reason why it's today as opposed to when she's back? Is there something we're not aware of, as kind of Councilmember Marshall was alluding to? Is there some information we do not know that needs to be today as opposed to when she returns?
So I don't know about additional information. Councillor Wiesner, maybe you can help answer
I
that.
guess that's the question. What do we know and what don't we know, right? I mean, I don't know that we know what we don't know or do know. So that's the problem. You know, obviously, the mayor is elected to call this meeting, and understanding that Councilmember Munns is out of town, you know, I'd like to at least hear what that subject matter is about so that we can understand. And then certainly, once we hear that information, we have the ability then to, table the discussion until such a time as Mayor Pro Tem can be present, if that's what's appropriate based upon that information. So I guess I'm kind of in a roundabout way trying to answer my perspective on Councilmember Stuckey's question, that I don't know that we don't know what we don't know.
Councilmember Heisen has her hand raised also, Mayor.
Councillor Heisen. Yes, Councillor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that at a minimum, Councilmember Munns should be able to participate, whether it's in person or via video, but clearly that's kind of an issue. So if she's not able to clearly verbally participate fully in the discussion, then I would support tabling this until after she gets back, unless someone can articulate a reason as to why we absolutely have to have this discussion today. I don't think waiting a couple weeks will make a difference, honestly, personally. I'd rather that she participate. Thanks.
Councillor Stuckey.
I tend to agree. Obviously, the difficulty here is by waiting, it leaves the public with a lot of questions. I don't think the public knows. I think we kind of have an inkling, but I don't think the public knows why this is even a discussion. And I don't like the idea of keeping the public in the dark any longer than we need to. However, if Mayor Pro Tem Munns has the ability to type, can I ask her, would you prefer we wait on this subject until you arrive? I would like to hear from her and her perspective if she would like this everything to be discussed now or she would like us to wait. Do you have the ability to type on your iPad or anything, like a chat window or anything like that?
It's very yes, no question, so she can.
Okay. Well,
Mayor Pro Tem has typed yes, wait until home.
okay. While I don't like, keeping the public at large in the dark necessarily and each other, I agree that we should wait until she returns.
So we do have a motion to strike this from the agenda today, a motion and a second, so that's what will happen. It will be taken off this agenda, and we'll wait. Any other, yeah, so we'll vote on that motion. Any other final questions on that? All in favor of striking this from the agenda today, signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Okay, do we have a vote? Okay, we have two, so that we have a vote of 5, 1, 2, 5.
Five
All
in favor.
opposed, same sign, and 2 opposed. Okay, that passes 5-2. Then we will move on with the agenda. Oh, yes, Councillor Stuckey.
I understand we have people here in the audience and they may have been coming to speak on this subject. I'm just curious if there's anyone who would like to make a comment today. I would like to make a motion that we allow for public comment today.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to allow for public comment. And that would be just this item or all items? Any comment?
I'm okay with any public comment the public would like to share with us today.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other input or questions about that? All in favor of that motion, signify by saying aye, raising your hand. That passes unanimously. Okay, so let's turn to public comment at this time and ask for anybody at this time that wishes to speak. Mr. Servadius, welcome.
Thank you. Joel Servadius, Oak Harbor City resident. Somebody knows something. So the RCW that was referenced states that this is being called PER, and it states the RCW. The RCW states nothing about a periodic review. So the mayor called this, so maybe the mayor knows something, but in the second line of your agenda bill, it said the mayor called it at multiple council members' requests. So multiple council members must know something and they want to request it, but nobody seems to know anything. It's interesting. So I also think those council members should go through the regular process of scheduling a meeting, special meeting. Regular meetings are already scheduled. Just like everyone else, that you make a motion, you get a second, and you get a majority vote to put it on the calendar. This meeting was called last Friday by the mayor for Monday, and it was then taken off because it was not referenced correctly, and it wasn't noticed correctly. So I don't know what the urgency was, but no one seems to know except maybe a couple people do. I want to touch, and I'll read this again when Mayor Pro Tem is here, but the tenure of her, the tradition, the tenure behind her being here. In 2018, she was reelected Mayor Pro Tem, and I'll key on Mr. Wiesner's comments at that time. He supported Ms. Munns, and he says, I too, this is verbatim, I too lean towards tradition, quite frankly. I think tradition's gotten the city a long ways. He then went on to compliment Mr. Pagao and all that he had contributed. And he ended his support for Ms. Munns with, I tend to move toward tradition. 2 years later, she was unanimously reelected. Just over 5 months ago, she was unanimously reelected by this group, I think except for Mr. Marshall. I don't know if you were here. And it was interesting, even Mr. Wiesner, who was nominated at that time, threw his support behind Ms. Munns. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone knows. So probably what I want to key in on, and I think hopefully if the city attorney is online, she'll want to key in on this too, is on Monday, Councilmember Stuckey sent an email out. And the email said this, verbatim, while we do have some recent issues regarding this that must be addressed, I agree with you and have stated so on multiple occasions to multiple council members and staff that we need to have this meeting with Beth when she can attend. I'm going to reread that. This is Mr. Stuckey's words. While we do have some recent issues regarding this that must be addressed, I agree with you and have stated so on multiple occasions to multiple council members. Mr. Stuckey, I would look forward to hearing you elaborate on who those multiple council members were that you've discussed this matter with over the previous week or so, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Servadius. Next for public comment. Mr. Hovey, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor Severns, members of the City Council. My name's Hal Hovey.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. One moment. You have my apologies. That was the end of Councilmember Servadius. Well, we're going to get the whole music now.
We could just have him bring his own theme song.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, let's try this again. Good afternoon, Mayor Severns, members of the City Council. My name's Hal Hovey. I'm a resident of Oak Harbor. I live on Bayshore Drive next to Windjammer Park. I would like to talk about the special meeting that was scheduled for Monday and subsequently canceled. I don't know the motivation or the circumstances behind why that meeting was originally scheduled or why it was canceled, but it seems very suspicious to me that a meeting was scheduled on a Friday afternoon for Monday over a subject that does not seem like an emergency subject to the public. The appearance to the public is that somebody was trying to sneak a meeting by the public. I would note that the notice of the meeting was never posted on Facebook by the city. It was posted only that I saw by Mr. Hoffmeyer. I appreciate your posting that. It was posted on the calendar, but it's, again, considering the city has been posting many other things on Facebook, why was the notice of the last-minute meeting not scheduled? As Mr. Servadius mentioned, the subject was just covered several months ago at the beginning of the new council, as is traditional. I have been going to council meetings for years, not quite as many as some of the others in the room, but I have never seen the subject come up again during the term of a council, and I'm very surprised that it was considered to be emergency enough that it would be covered at a time when the current mayor pro tem was out of town. I'm going to say that this smacks of cronyism or incompetence. I'm hoping it was incompetence, but it makes the city look very, very bad, especially considering we have a lot of new council members, most of whom campaigned on a platform of improving the transparency and communication with the citizens. This is not following through on that campaign promise. So I would ask that the city do better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hovey. Anyone else for public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on with our agenda. Item first is Legal Department. Item A, Public Safety Levy Lid Lift and Bond Excess Levy. Ballot language. I think for this, we have our Finance Director, David Goldman, and he may have one or two people to introduce. Mr. Goldman?
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm David Goldman, Finance Director. Yeah, we have a few people here who will be available to answer any questions you may have regarding the proposed ballot language and explanatory statement. First off, we have Jim McNeil. He is with Foster Garvey. They are our bond counsel. Jim has his hand up. How you doing, Jim? We also have Duncan Brown. He is with PFM, and he is the city's financial advisor. And of course, we have me. We have our fire chief, Ray Merrill, and we also have our city attorney, Hillary. So what I'll do first, I think, is just share my screen. Let's see here. This over here so you can see it a little bit better. So there's two major things to discuss tonight. This is following the City Council's direction at the last meeting to kind of take a closer look at the ballot language text to see what can and what can't be put in there. So it'll be a little bit clearer to the voters what they're voting on. In the second page of the agenda bill, we have the original language for the levy lid lift. And as you'll recall, the levy lid lift is for the operational and some capital costs. That requires a 50% vote. And we also have some language, proposed language, for the bond excess levy ballot. And that, as you'll recall, requires a 60% vote. So starting with the first one, this was what was originally provided to the City Council a few weeks ago at the meeting. And based on the guidance provided by the City Council and working with our bond counsel, with our city attorney and so on, and our fire chief and everybody else involved, this is the revised language, which we hope might be a bit clearer to the voters of what they're voting on. And we also have an explanatory statement that we worked up as well. And that explanatory statement is what will appear in the voter's guide. So what we can do for this meeting is we can kind of go through these one at a time and just get the feedback from the City Council as to which direction they want to go in regarding the ballot language for each item, and then the explanatory statement for each item. So with that, it's open to the City Council or whoever wants to speak.
Anyone? Okay. Councillor Hoffmeyer.
Let me get back to the line here, David. Where it, okay, so capital cost. Would you mind explaining what type of wiggle room that gives us? Would that, if the need were to arise, would that allow for a pay-go type situation?
Well, yeah, the thought was that adding the capital cost to the language would allow for that. And we could have our, we could have our bond counsel or Hillary expound upon that a little bit further. Jim.
Sure. Hillary, did you want to address that, or do you want me to take the?
No, run with it. You're bond counsel.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I think the notion of including a list of items, the reference to capital costs is fairly generic and should be within the broad discretion of the council as far as what that necessarily would mean. The same with operating and capital together. I think it's a fairly broad description to allow you maximum flexibility. David, does that comport to your?
Yeah, that was my understanding. Yeah.
Okay. Any other council questions or input about this? Yes, Councillor Wiesner.
David, I guess I just still have a, do we have to state in there that, we're proposing a raise of 0.6656 per thousand. That next line, to a maximum rate of 2.4886 per thousand. Is there a reason that, when we start throwing multiple figures at people, right? And I'm not saying that people aren't smart enough to figure this out, but again, when I look at this, I zone in on the two numbers, and I see the one number being 4 times the other number, right? I don't read the words that say to a maximum. Well, I read the word that says maximum. I get that word too, right? The word 2A just kind of goes into oblivion as my head is spinning over one number being 4 times the amount of the other number.
Oh, the revised language is on the bottom. Yeah, the bond council updated it a little bit so it could be a little bit clearer. It'll be this sentence here.
Oh, I see. Okay, down below. Yeah. So it's the tax rate for collection of 2023 of 2.4886 and assessed value, an estimated increase of approximately 6. Okay. And do we have to use that 2.4886 number in there?
That's required by law.
Okay, thank you.
And I might just add that a lot of, we're bound by certain limitations in statute regarding word limits and what you include in these ballot measures. And really a lot of the details of describing the effective cost really will be borne by the city as far as describing that in additional documents, whether that's part of the explanatory statement or whether that's in a fact sheet that you'll have on your website to provide taxpayers with kind of a greater detail of exactly what that necessarily means. So that's typically what we see. I wish we had a lot more room in the ballot language related to these, but statute is fairly stringent on approaches.
Any other input or questions about this? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on then to our next item on the agenda.
Oh, well, wait.
Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute.
I broke this item up into 3 kind of sub-items. So the first sub-item would be the ballot language for the levy lid lift, the 50% one. But I think it might make sense to go over the explanatory statement now for this particular levy lid lift before we move on to the bond. So it's not that one, that's this one. All right, so this is the 200-word limited explanatory statement and this will appear in the voter's guide. So you can see that it gives a little bit more detail as to what this is actually trying to do. It does include some of that language here in the middle paragraph where it talks about the 2.4886 and the 0.6656, but it also provides a little bit more information as far as what the impact to a home might be. We used for every 100,000 because the average value that we have now is of kind of, right now, but we know that's going to change by the time 2023 valuations are set and assessed. So we looked at about 10 or 12 different explanatory statements from throughout the state of Washington that were similar to what we were trying to do. And we found some of them that instead of giving like an average, which could change and someone can say, well, that's not the average. We just said for every 100,000 of assessed valuation, this is your impact per month, and this is your approximate impact per year. And then, of course, you can find out your assessed values from the Island County assessor. And the top paragraph provided a little bit more context as to why we were asking for the some of the things we're asking for as part of the levy lid lift. And we couldn't fit everything from the presentations that we gave and Ray Merrill gave. But one of the things we were able to fit within the 200 words which I think tells a pretty decent story, is how we're currently at 0.45 full-time firefighters per thousand as compared to the benchmark that was in the presentation of 1.25. And taking on the additional firefighters or funding them through this measure will bring that ratio up closer to the 1.25 standard. So this is what we were able to develop for the city council review and feedback.
Okay. Turn to council. Questions? Not seeing any.
All right.
Okay.
And we can, sorry.
It's up to you, Mr. Goldman. Back to you.
Oh, that's me. Good. Perfect. All right. Then we have the bond. So the original language for the bond was here, and the revised language is down here. One of the items that we revised was to increase the maximum from 20 to 21 years, and that was really based on timing. If we end up floating the bonds early in the year, we may not see the revenues until the following year, which would leave us in a position of having to pay debt service, whether it be interest or principal, in that first year without any revenues to pay for it. So the thought was, if that ends up being the case, we can capitalize interest in the first year, and then we'd have the revenues to be able to pay for that capitalized interest and all the regular payments for the remaining 20 years. Now, it doesn't mean that's something that will necessarily have to happen, but it gives the flexibility to go ahead and do it that way if that ends up being, advantageous. But the total dollar amount will not change. It'll still stay at the maximum of $9.2 million.
Any questions there, council? Councillor Stuckey?
In the meetings that we've had about this, maybe I missed it. Because I remember originally it was a low number, and that was an old quote, and then it went to 8 million, I thought, a couple meetings ago. And now it's 9.2. I mean, it keeps, I understand the one big increase to 8 million, but then it increased again to 9.1. I mean, what am I missing?
It's pretty quick. The station went from 6 to 8, but the ladder truck stayed at 1.2.
Gotcha. Sorry. I think I made that exact mistake another meeting, so I appreciate that.
And then finally, I mean, if that's all the feedback we have for this, then the final thing is just to move on to the explanatory statement for the general obligation bonds. And we went ahead and tried to follow the same idea here to go ahead and tell folks that this would be the approximate impact per year or per month for each $100,000 of assessed valuation. And we provided a little bit more context as to some of the reasoning. It's very generic, but we do have word limitations, but we provided this sentence up here to kind of provide the reason why we're looking at a second fire station. That, without going into response times and all those details and numbers,
Councillor Hoffmeyer has a question.
David, thank you to you, the bond counsel, Hillary, anybody else that has helped on this. Being able to include a few of council's recommendations in here to clear this language up a little, working within the parameters of the 75 word count and the 200 word count here with all the other required verbiage. I think it paints the best picture you could, and I know the fire department is going to do the best they can to explain this to everyone. So thank you.
Okay. That concludes council questions now. Back to you, Mr. Goldman.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening to us and taking some time to read this and give us your feedback. At the next regular council meeting, we'll be bringing to you resolutions for two items for the levy lid lift and the excess levy for the purpose of getting them on the November ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Okay, we'll move on to the next item at this time. Economic Development, discussion of agreement with the Economic Development Council for Island County, EDC, for consulting services. And today we have our City Administrator, Blaine Oborn, and the Executive Director of the EDC, Sharon Sappington. So, Mr. Oborn, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, and good evening, Council. I'm Blaine Oborn, Oak Harbor City Administrator, and as the Mayor mentioned, also joining us and available for questions during this presentation is the Executive Director for the Economic Council for Island County, Susan, or I gotta get your name right, Sharon Zappington. I know you are, Sharon. Sharon Zappington, so I think she should be on, so sorry to mispronounce your name there. So presentation's up now, so I'll just kind of go through it and take questions at the end here. Just next slide here is kind of a summary of what the EDC is. It's an independent nonprofit organization, but it's primarily funded by government expenditures. It's a designated ADU, which stands for Associate Economic Development. So it's basically the economic development corporation or identity for the county with that ADU, and it gets state funding by being that designated there as that ADO, we got to say it right, for the county. And then the EDC collaborates with elected officials, so a lot of elected officials are on that board, and also appointed officials such as me. And then the community people are also on that board there. So, and just kind of a little bit where we're going, we've given 3 years of funding under the Mariel's contract authority, but we're exceeding the 30,000 now, so future funding would be dependent upon the council moving forward there. So the next slide, just the strategies here specific to the EDC, economic recovery and resiliency. I think our executive director leads the meeting with the county and other officials and the chamber and such to continue in that effort. It was very strategically part of the pandemic, but it's kind of went more general. And then just a lot of other things, assistance with businesses. They have an individual that does, that's trained to help businesses and do outreach there. And then a lot of the other areas there. I think Sharon sits on the Tourism and Hospitality Board and contributes in all these areas here for the rural economy. We've utilized some of our expertise for broadband and some of the other areas there. So moving on to specific services related to the city and the agreement that's attached that would be come back at a future council meeting for approval. These are the areas over the kind of the years that we kind of focused on. We did focus on Opportunity Zone in 2018, a program that came out, and we were the only identity in the county that had an area that was designated as Opportunity Zone. So Sharon was great in becoming the expertise and promoting that. And then it kind of moved into some of the other areas there, helping with federal grant programs. It was a key area there. Business startups, they do a lot. Like I mentioned, they have individuals that do that, and people who are usually planning to locate. A lot of them contact Sharon, and she's kind of our economic person expert on kind of helping with that. A newer program is Leadership Would-Be program, and then the Heritage Bank Community Development Loan Program is something new that we're promoting here, and that's another similar, it's a little bit more larger area than the Opportunity Zone, and it's a little easier program to assist. So we're promoting that. I think about half the city, it's not the whole city, qualifies for that program, and so that's something that we'll continue to promote, and Sharon's, as part of her agreed services here, will do that. And then rather than, this kind of started out with just them requesting a kind of an allocation. Here we have a tradition of putting everything in a professional service agreement and actually having deliverables. And so these are specific deliverables, and they have to be attributed to Oak Harbor. And if she doesn't do these deliverables, then the money comes down. I was supposed to get a list of some of the deliverables, but I didn't get time to do that in my conversation. But Sharon could probably answer some of the specific things from some of the billings that she does. And moving on to the next one, just just a little historical funding here. Like I said, it started out in 2018 and 2019 being primarily focusing on the Opportunity Zone program, and then it morphed into the other deliverables, and then we added some more deliverables there. So due to, they were able to get grant funding, so they didn't need anything from the city that year. And then 2020 was, it was up to $10,000, but like I said, if it's just based upon what they can invoice and attribute to Oak Harbor, so it was at $7,800 instead of the full $10,000 they could have billed it for, and it'll be that same way. It's been a long established process, so it just made sense for us to make it a 2-year and $10,000 per year in going forward. And then next slide, please. And then right now I'll take consideration or questions from council, and then if council's in favorable, then we'll move this forward for a council action. So right now we're ready to take questions.
Move it forward at the next meeting? Is that the proposed plan?
July 12th, yeah. We pretty much already have the agreements in the packet ready to go.
So and have we budgeted this $10,000 per year? I mean, I think we've done that in the past.
Yes, it's already budgeted. Yeah, there's $30,000 in the administration executive budget, mayor's budget, and for economic development, and this comes out of that $30,000. So the $10,000 is already budgeted. This would be in the general fund funding, not the ARPA funding.
Okay.
Certainly you can do that if you wanted to, but it's already budgeted in the general fund. So that's where we drew it for in the previous years, and that's where we would draw it for 2022, and then we would budget for it in 2023.
Okay. Questions? Council? Input? Yes, Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Oborn. I have a question. You said this has been long established, but it looks like 2018 was the first time that we've paid additional funds into the EDC. It's my understanding EDC's been around a lot longer than that. So can you speak to how long the EDC's been around and why all of a sudden we're contributing additional funds?
I can't speak before my time, but I know this came about in 2018. They did a letter for us, and they asked for funding for all the municipalities there. And Sharon can answer the question if some of the other municipalities contribute. We're a lot larger than the other two little municipalities, so they're much smaller than us. So we talked about it. We really needed her for the Opportunity Zone, and so that was a win-win with her expertise. She worked with her colleagues in other departments, and she really gave us some bandwidth that we didn't have to run the program. And then we kind of looked at other deliverables that she can do, and so we kind of got it over in a deliverable issue. We've kind of worked this through over the years, and so we've kind of got it over the 4 years that we've kind of been doing this. We've had these 6 really good deliverables that we can kind of identify as tangible things. They're focusing on service, but I know even before the funding here, before I came here, the expansion of TSI was attributed to EDC, and there's probably some other smaller examples that Sharon might think of that she's brought businesses or worked with businesses. I think she was Harbor Freight people, I think, contacted her, and so and Sharon certainly can add to that if you want, Sharon. And hopefully we can hear her. Yep, I see her.
Hey, Blaine, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Hello, Mayor Sarens and members of the City Council. Happy to be here. I can't really speak that much before my time either. I began in May of 2018. I do know that the EDC was very involved with the TSI, more currently. I was working with the owner of the property that Harbor has now moved into. It used to be the Office Depot. I don't know where my brain is. Office Depot. So, we did work together on that. We are still looking for another tenant there. And then there's other properties too that I've been kind of keeping my eye on. We do on our website, we do have a site where you can go and look at all the available commercial properties in Oak Harbor through a third party. Any other questions on that?
Councilor Marshall?
I guess my follow-up question would be, we're halfway through the year 2022, and we're asking for 10,000 for this year, or potentially 10,000. Can we see what has been done for us this year, and what kind of deliverables have we already seen for this year? You know, Mr. Oborn, I've already asked you for some past invoices, just kind of get a feel for additional work that the EDC has done for us. I mean, I'm not trying to disparage the EDC in any way, shape, or form, but it just seems to me like these deliverables are very vague, and they're all things that are gonna take place whether or not we pay additional $10,000 or not. I mean, maintenance and updating of website content which benefits Oak Harbor is a very vague use of our funds, I think, and I've never heard of the Heritage Bank Community Development Loan Program. That seems like be something that Heritage Bank would be promoting. So some of these things just seem very vague to me, that it would be real easy to write an invoice saying, hey, we updated our website, we would like some money now. And so that's just my concern, just looking at this from up here, as is kind of this is a new thing for me to take a look at here. So I appreciate the questions.
Well, I'll defer to my colleague. I mean, she asked, I was going to try to pull the $7,000 invoice, but unfortunately, you and I didn't connect until right before the meeting, and I didn't have time to do it. So I appreciate your trying to give me a heads up there. Can you kind of give a breakdown off the top of your head, what you kind of remember the invoices were and how they flow? And we certainly could follow up, and if we bring this back at the council meeting, it wouldn't be very hard for us to turn around and take all those summary numbers and delineate them into actual dollar amounts. I mean, she invoices that way. It's just a matter of pulling the invoices as deliverables. So, Sharon?
Yeah, to the statement that we would be doing it anyway. Yes, some of it we would be doing it anyway, but we can't do it alone, and we need more funding. We're a poor nonprofit, and we try to leverage the current dollars that we have. And we do know that we need more funding to be able to go forward with these programs, to really give them what they deserve. And also with the funding from Oak Harbor, then it's our ability to say to somebody that might be saying, oh, you're spending too much time on Oak Harbor. Well, no, Oak Harbor is helping fund this. And so that kind of gives us the right to do that little extra push. For example, when I was working on the Opportunity Zone, I definitely got pushback from some of the other board members, like, Sharon, you're spending too much time on Oak Harbor and their Opportunity Zone. And I could push back saying, no, they're helping with funding. So that would be, one of the major arguments. As far as what we've already been doing, we will be helping with the promotion and assistance on some of these grants that are going to be coming out. There's going to be another grant coming from the Department of Commerce, working Washington 5. So we can be very instrumental in that. We have been giving Oak Harbor businesses one-on-one business assistance. We have a business advisor who works out of the office in Coopville. She lives in Oak Harbor, so she's very, very familiar with Oak Harbor. And so she does give one-on-one assistance to businesses, and it's not just a one-time deal. It's ongoing relationships with these businesses. And she digs right into the areas that they really need. Obviously, a lot of them that need financial support or education. As we know, a lot of small businesses kind of struggle with the financial side when they're first getting going. They might not be able to even read their financial statements. But so that one's a really big push. And the Heritage Bank Community Development Loan Program, that's new. So that's why you haven't heard of it before. And this is only being offered in the lower income areas, or we call it economically distressed areas of Oak Harbor. It's not being offered anyplace else. as far as I know yet anyway, in Island County. So it would be, it's, the opportunity zone is there within that. And then also to the east, there's more property there that's in that area. So like I said, that's new, and we're going to be pushing that or helping promote that, getting the word out to the businesses that might be able to need it and take advantage of it. Does that help?
Go ahead.
It does, and I appreciate the answers. Thank you. Again, I don't mean to disparage the EDC or be argumentative, but am I correct in my understanding that that position that you had mentioned that is helping to counsel business owners, that is available to any business on the island, correct? Or in the county?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not specific to just Oak Harbor. Now, how many other municipalities are going to pay for that additional assistance besides Oak Harbor?
Right now, I'm working on them. We do have a couple that, have been open to the conversation as far as some funding.
Thank you.
But I appreciate your questions. That it's the right thing to do to ask these questions for sure.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Stuckey?
Councillor Marshall, you hammered on all the same questions I had. The only thing I would ask is, to me, it comes down to tangibility, right? I mean, we are talking about an economic development person for our city. And as we're talking about that discussion, we're talking about we need tangibility. And I don't mean this to be disparaging, but not just some statistics and info on a website. I mean, our business is tangibly being brought here because of what the EDC does. My only request, and I don't know how much you can share and not share due to privacy, and we don't need to take up a lot of time, but could you email us before we do a formal vote on this in a future council meeting, just concrete, tangible examples of, we help this business with this. This business may not have come here had we not been here. I agree it's a little vague, and maybe that's on purpose. Maybe there's some privacy issues I'm not aware of. But would it be possible before our next council meeting to email some examples of, we help this business do this, we help this business do this? I mean, we want to be good partners, and the amount of money that's being asked for is not that much money, but it is money, and it is taxpayer money. So we just want to make sure that it's giving us tangible benefits that we can show to the public to justify that expense. Thank you.
Yeah, let me see what I can do. We go into confidentiality with all of the businesses that we advise. We do not even say what their name is, because some businesses don't want perhaps their competitor to know that they're getting outside help, because it might make them look weak. So the only time we can share that is if we get explicit permission in writing from the business. But let me look to see if we have any that have already given that permission. And if not, I'll see if I can identify some good examples, and then I can approach them and ask them if it's okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor
Sure.
Stuckey. Councillor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for all that, Sharon. Definitely appreciate all the efforts you do. Blaine, would you just make sure that all of council gets copies of those past invoices for the past 3 years, the 3 years there that we helped fund? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiesner. Yes, Councillor Hoffmeyer.
Sharon, thank you so much for attending this workshop and for all that you do to help represent Oak Harbor. I think it's been about 2 years since you and I talked on the phone. I think you were doing a reference on one of your employees, I believe at the time. So since then, I've been able to watch some of the work you guys do, and pretty supportive of it. I think having some familiarity of the work done with TSI or the Harbor Freight property. I think if one of those companies, one of those owners was, or both, was willing to step forward and tell council that, hey, we couldn't have done this without the EDC, I really think that would go a long ways as well. Knowing that to be the case, but it sure would be nice to see examples of that. So again, thank you for attending today, and we'll look forward to future correspondence in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have a comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so when Jim Slowick was mayor, it was Sharon Hard at EDC that got wind of waste management trying to find a place that was great to live with good schools. And so she worked with the mayor, Jim at that time, and they did the building where Kelly Williams, where Wiesner's office is. But for a while, it offered a lot of jobs. They even had some help with it, but it was county EDC that helped make that connection. And then I believe another connection they helped make is on Technical Drive. If you go up, I think we have the park on the left, dog park, but on the, on the right and on the left of it is a company that needed to expand, and I believe they did. And because of that connection, then our building department worked with them to expand, and they added 100 employees. That was the speculation. And I believe that all happened, but that was before you were mayor, maybe your first term, if you remember. And so that was a big boom. So it was working with EDC, and they would contact you, and then you would do the appropriate staff. So they do good work, and they can cover more ground because they have time to do it. Would this be for a while in place of hiring a EDC permitted employee, possibly?
No, I don't believe that this relationship with the EDC would intersect any plans the council have for an EDC employee. And we've done we've done business with the EDC for a number of years. You are certainly correct. So they have a direct connection with the Department of Commerce in Olympia that at times can be very beneficial. So we want to keep a relationship, that's for sure. But we need to understand the deliverables, I think, like the other council have spoken about. But we'll keep this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mayor, no, I think it's so true, and possibly if the contract goes through, I hope it does, then possibly we could have a special workshop and just have it for an hour and to get a little more background on the workings with them or how they work. That might be better than trying to do it in a nutshell in 10 minutes. So, but anyway, I'm for this, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councillor Evans?
Yes, Ms. Abington, I notice on your website that you have members and people can become members. Do people need to be a member to receive your services?
Not the business advising services. That we do that through the Small Business Development Center, which is funded by SBA. I mean, we pay for it, but it's also partially paid for by the Small Business Administration. And so they say that we cannot say no to anybody that's a qualified business or a person that wants to start a business. So that part isn't. What we do offer our members is more access with us as far as advocacy or communications with the Washington Department of Commerce. We are a partner with the Washington Department of Commerce. We are their feet on the ground. I have meetings with the Department of Commerce at least once a week, at least. And during those meetings, I am providing input about what our reality is here in our county. And I think this is very important. You know, Island County is a rural county, and we have to be able to speak up louder sometimes than the urban communities. And so Oak Harbor being the major location for economic development is a topic that comes up quite often with the Washington Department of Commerce. And so they want our input, and I'm very happy to give input to them. And so our members have more access to us and amongst themselves to, you know, think about what are those things that, you know, we really need to voice and advocate for with the Washington Department of Commerce and others.
Okay, thank you for that. And, you know, Mayor Pro Tem Munns made a comment that she'd like to have some more time to get a real grasp of what you guys offer, I think that would be something we'd probably want to hear before we vote on the contract rather than after. My thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Anyone else for comments or input? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Olborn and Ms. Sappington, for your time here. We'll move on to our next item, which falls under Development Services, and it's height limitation text amendment. And for this today, we have our Principal Planner, Kak Kamak. Welcome, Kak.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, members of the council. Kak Kamak, Principal Planner. I hope you can hear me. I have a short presentation on this proposal to consider a text amendment for height limits. So I'm going to share my screen and share some slides with you. All right. I hope you can see that. I will continue if I don't hear anybody saying that they can't. All right. So I have a few slides. This is a text amendment for considering height limits. And why are we considering such a text amendment at this time? There appears to be a need in the community. The community need is expressed through the desire to have cultural and artistic structures located in public spaces. An example is, as everybody knows, the proposed windmill is a great example of this. It's good to have a consistent process that provides open and equal opportunity to consider these structures. And when a community deals with things like this, something that's coming up more often or new, we realize that the existing processes are not designed for these. For example, cell towers. When cell towers first came into use, the existing regulations were not necessarily written for that, so you had to rewrite some of that. And then cell towers also changed over the years, and you had to keep amending them to consider new towers. So this is a new thing that in the community, a community that has decided to take on cultural and artistic structures should have a good venue and a process to consider them. And so with more of the recent requests to consider them, this text amendment is brought forward to streamline that process. So where is it best to have code language related to this? And we have existing code language in the limitation of uses chapter in the zoning ordinance. It regulates structures like roof structures, flagpoles, and this is the best place we think that could address cultural and artistic structures as well. So in terms of the process and maybe the approach to trying to consider these amendments, there's one methodology, which is the definition methodology, where you can write a code and you can try and define cultural and artistic structures and just leave it at that. There's some benefits to that, but there are also some cons to that. Having definitions can be broadly interpreted over time. It can lead to unintentional consequences, and there could be inconsistencies in terms of the process of how somebody is able to locate something such as the windmill or any other sculpture in a public place. The determination method, which is what I think is recommended here, is for somebody to make a determination first whether something is cultural or artistically significant. And in this case, we think the City Council is the best body to make that determination. And then if we take on that determination method, then the public input process can be more streamlined, can be more specific. And after that determination is made, then a project can do a land use application, which will be very location specific. and can be dealt with by a hearing examiner. The drawback for the determination method is normally if the city council makes a determination, there is a thought process that it's a guarantee that it will get done. And that's not the case here with this process, because there may be conditions placed or there may be conditions that can't be met by that piece for a certain location. So those are some challenges in the long term that can, pros and cons of these methodologies. So how does that determination happen at the city council level? Again, because of the subjective matter of these structures, you want to have a community-wide decision. You could do it by resolution. So, for example, a commissioned city art. If the Arts Commission or the City Council commissions an art, they have a resolution to commission that art. You can recognize such work to be culturally significant, and therefore they'll automatically qualify if they do exceed the height limit of the district, to qualify for the process. Other ways of doing it is by a professional services agreement. This is a standard process that the city uses with most sculpture and artwork that the city has collected. And these can be done with various interest groups or community service groups, schools, or other private agencies. So establishing that at the city council level allows for the public input process, and that decision can be made with that input. And then once that decision is made, and then you look at more physical characteristics of the land and surrounding nature of it in the conditional use permit process. So the process would work, like as I mentioned, go to a hearing examiner. These are land use specific issues. Surrounding properties are notified on these issues. There's a public hearing on it. And land use decisions are mainly criteria driven. And so we can establish criteria for that. And there is ability to place conditions. So with that in mind, staff has taken a quick attempt at drafting some language. And again, this is a very draft language. And I will already say that the language that is in your packet is already slightly different than what I have on screen, because since the packet's been out, this has been moving a little fast. I've had some internal discussions with our legal staff, and we've massaged the language to work better. As you can see, it's still in a draft form. But the content and the intent of it is primarily the same, even the wordsmithing is slightly different. So this would be the proposed language that would get into the limitation of uses section. It talks about the city council determining whether something is culturally significant. And only if that's the case, they can extend over the height limit. And there are two restrictions here. One, it assigns the zoning district in which they can be placed, which is the public facilities district. And then it also defines parks. So public facilities districts, just FYI, has also schools and churches and other uses in the city. And so I think the idea is to very narrowly target these structures in parks and in public properties. And so that's why those restrictions and specifications are in the proposed code. To consider these structures, again, the code specific criteria should be adopted. And so this is the proposed language to consider those structures. And these are similar to existing code languages that we have. These are not new, but they are location specific. So they are similar to other conditional use permit criteria. The distance that the structure should be placed away from a property line, again, these dimensions are taken from existing conditional use criteria. And so, but these are the variables that can be changed by legislation. However, this is what we have as a standard number. So we pick some of the existing numbers from what we have. So that is my draft shot at the text amendment at this time. I will Depending on how the city council wants to proceed, the adoption process from here on would be to create a checklist and do the noticing requirements, and then bring it forward to for hearings at the Planning Commission and the City Council. And I'm hoping that some of this could be done before the end of September. So that is kind of a brief about this text amendment. And I will turn it back over to the council for questions and comments.
Thank you, Mr. Kamak. We'll turn to council, and I see Councillor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for that, Jack. Very, very clear and concise as always. I appreciate that. There is one little discrepancy I'm seeing in the council packet. You have 50 foot as the minimum setback, and in your presentation you have 30 foot. Is 30 foot what's going to be proposed, or 50 feet like in the packet?
Hearing
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, my mic was off. Sorry. Well, I was saying all sorts of good things about you, Ken.
Increase my volume.
You missed all of it. It was all good. In the packet, you have a note of a 50-foot setback, but in your presentation, there was a 30-foot setback. Which one's going to be proposed?
The 30 foot, and I apologize, like I said, it's a draft, and we kind of looked at it. I picked the 50 from the language that was just above in the sections, and I looked at it later, and I thought the 30 foot criteria was in the conditional use section of the previous set of criteria, so I put the 30 foot back in. So the 30 is what we would propose, but if the council wants to do any other number, it is a choice.
Well, and within the conditional use permit, we can always make that number larger as part of the conditional use, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. So
It says more than 30 feet, so if the hearing examiner determines that a larger number is necessary, they can always condition it.
Yeah, and I'm content with the 30 feet. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. Thanks again for all your work, CAC.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiesner. Councillor Stuckey.
I'm not sure we need to have wordage to the effect, but determining if something is culturally, artistically significant, would that go as for an advisory through the Arts Commission and then to us, or straight to us to determine if it is culturally or artistically significant?
This code language is not trying to capture that process. I think that process can happen over time in different ways. And the council can establish the process for that. We don't need a code for that. So if a art piece is normally moving through its approval process, it normally comes through the Arts Commission, and then it comes to the City Council. If something is not a art piece, if it's cultural, then it may not go to the Arts Commission, it may come directly to City Council. If there's something in a park that they want to put, it could come through any different ways, I think, and I don't think we need the code to specifically say how it happens.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Kamak, I'm a little bit confused on, we went to using the hearing examiner for variances because of the Lehigh project, where it was implied that Lehigh, anyone who voted against theirs could have been sued, and the city didn't necessarily defend us. So it was decided to do more of these variances or conditional uses through the hearing examiner. So now you're saying, well, council will do it, or it's a combination. I'm just a little fuzzy on that. If you could explain that. I'm sorry if I didn't hear that correctly. I've been trying to keep my volume up on my phone, so I would appreciate it, sir.
Absolutely. So variances are a little different than conditional uses. Variances are deviations from the code that have a little stricter criteria. So a good example would be a handicap accessible ramp that needs to be built for a house, let's say, and it has to be in the setback. There's no other space for it. The house is small and the lot is small. So that would qualify for a variance, and those have very strict criteria, and you have to follow those. There shouldn't be any wiggle room. So I think the previous process that you mentioned earlier in terms of lehigh or the variances involved are those type of processes that were taken from the council's action and put to the hearing examiner because they're very property specific. Now this one is a little bit more subjective. This is related to art and sculptures or cultural items. And this is just to make a determination whether something is artistic or cultural. And it could be for anything. So any sculpture that has come forward to the city council today enters into a personal or a professional services agreement. And in that agreement, the city recognizes that this is an art piece. And that's what that's all is needed for that piece to say, okay, now we have an agreement with the council. They recognize that this is an art piece, and therefore we're applying for a conditional use permit. So it just gives them the permission to apply for a conditional use, a qualifier, so to speak, to apply for a permit. It doesn't guarantee that they get the permit, it's just a qualifier.
Okay, so if a piece such as the Angel of Creativity that is already in the process, they wouldn't have to get this conditional permit because they're already in the system and they are trying to complete that contract that we had the mayor sign in order to accept the piece, correct? Or not? You're going to make them go back and do this one also?
They were already going to go through the conditional use permit process. I think when we found out about all the dimensions, that was the recommendation that was given to them, that they need to go through the conditional use permit process. At that time, they were the unique exception. So the existing code language was interpreted to accommodate them. Now that we're seeing a few more pieces come, we're just trying to streamline it because the existing process was not exactly built for this. So they would have to go through a conditional use permit, and they know that as well.
Okay, I think they've already started it, I hope. But yeah, that piece is only 37 feet high, whereas the windmill will be a lot higher. So I was just wanting to be clear on that.
Yes, all of them will go through the conditional use permit process. We're just kind of solidifying the process for everybody.
Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's a 5-foot sculpture or 20-foot, they're going to have to do conditional use.
No, okay, that's a great question. It's only ones that are above the height limit. So you can have.
Okay, what is the height limit? What is the height limit right now?
35 feet.
Okay, all right, didn't know, thank you.
Yep. So that's a great question. I'm sorry I didn't mention. So other art pieces that are less than 35 feet can go in without any, this is only for the height limits, and that's what this text amendment is, just to consider the higher pieces.
Okay, thanks. That clears up a lot, Mr. Kamak. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
Sure.
Anyone else? Council? Questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kamak. We will move on to our next item, which is engineering, an update on Portland LOOS. And for this today, we have our city engineer, Alex Warner. Or no, I guess we have our engineer, Brett Arvidsson. Brett, sorry about that.
Project manager with the city, and we're here to talk about installing Portland LOOS at Flintstone Park.
I just went on, I think. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. To give you some background on this, we intend to place the restrooms at Flintstone Park with Portland LOOS. We've had a long history of vandalism and bad behavior down there, so the Portland LOOS are a much more efficient solution for that. These LOOS were actually purchased at the same time we purchased the Windjammer Portland LOOS. It's been a couple years ago. And the project involves demolishing of the restroom, installing a concrete slab, putting the LOOS on the slab, new water sewer connections, a new electrical service, and also relocating the video camera system, which is down there right now. This is our existing restrooms. They're at the end of Dock Street. They're kind of obvious, so we're going to actually try to move it a little out of the way so they aren't so obtrusive, or obstructive, I should say. This is what our Portland LOOS look like. And by the way, one other issue on the Portland LOOS I forgot to mention is we've had another act of vandalism. There was extensive damage last week, and so we've decided to close them down. We're not going to put more money into the old restrooms, so we can just tear them down again. So for the time being, we're going to continue on with porta potties. These are the Portland LOOS we have at Windjammer. The ones we're going to install are identical to this. We are going to use a different configuration where they'll be actually not linear like this, but side by side. These are actually pretty complicated structures. We've had, just not something you drop on the slab. You actually have to be leveled and properly installed. And the doors have been a bit problematic over the years with the wind down there, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So anyway, this is what our site plan will look like here. The existing bathroom is right there. They will be torn down. We are not tearing out the slab. The slab will remain in place. We will install the LOOS about 35 feet to the east of the existing restrooms. They'll be on a slab. We're going to orient them north with the doors pointing to the south. What's happened in the past is those doors are very large, and we get the strong winds coming from the south, and you can't even move the doors in heavy winds, and that's been a problem. Also cause a tendency to bend the structure. So we're actually orienting them to the south and putting some shrubs behind it to actually break the wind. So that'll help us with our door problems there quite a bit. And then we're also putting some screening in front of it to kind of block the view. You're going to be having the bathroom facing toward the house, the buildings over there and the road, so we want to have some screening for that. Of course, we always have to trade screening for security. So while we're going to have the screening there, it's still going to be fairly open so the police can see what's going on in those areas. Yes.
Could you help me looking at this here? Where would the flagpole roughly be located, and where would the Flintstone car be off the map there? Or?
Yeah, it's actually off the map. The flagpole is down to the south right here. This is Bay Shore right here, and Dock kind of comes right there. And the transit center is right over here. Yeah. So it'll be connected to, we'll have a sidewalk connection here. The sewer is going to either come this way or this way. We think we have a cheaper solution here, which we're investigating now. There'll be a new water, then a new electrical service here. We'll have an electrical panel located right here. We're trying to keep this as bare bones as possible. Right now, we're looking at an estimated cost of $75,000. We've tried to keep it as simple as possible and keep it as done as possible. But with the costs right now, I'm a little worried about what our costs are looking like, because the pricing right now is just going every which way. But this is what we're thinking right now. So our schedule for this project is we're actually in the process of final design. We're hoping to have the final design completed next week. We'll advertise the project for bid and probably open bids in early August. We hope to award the project at the second council meeting in August, start construction in September, and finish construction in December of 2022. So we're allowing about 90 days for it to get installed. Could go faster. Questions?
Okay, Councillor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for that, Brett. You had said doors facing south, but I think you mean doors facing north?
North, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm reversed.
Yeah, gotcha. And then I guess I'm just a little concerned looking at from the perspective of somebody with a wheelchair.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a big issue actually we were working on yesterday is we have to have in front of the doors, we actually have 7 feet there. So the minimum is 60 inches. So we've got plenty of room for both to open the door and also for a wheelchair to get by the open door.
I'm just concerned how somebody in a wheelchair would get there because their two choices would be to park in the parking spots in the park, but then have to go out and around and down the sidewalk.
They also can park in front on the street there too.
But then for, again, a wheelchair,
Yeah.
there's a curb,
Yeah.
right? And we don't have an access ramp there. So if they park down on the street, they've got to get
Okay.
out on the street, go back to the entrance to the park, get up on the sidewalk to come back around.
That's a good question.
So I'd like to think that we want to think about that maybe a little bit.
Maybe we probably need to put a curb cut there.
Maybe a
for
curb cut
Yeah.
or something, but, you know, obviously we've got to make sure we think of those folks too. And I know we always do, but
Yeah,
that's what we thought.
the ADA was the thought, and we do have the accessible right. I think we can make it a little more convenient for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Great question there, Councillor Wiesner. Councillor Marshall?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Robertson. I'm just curious why not putting it back on the same location? Why not put it back on the same
Those
slab?
require a fairly thick slab, so we'd have to tear the slab out and build a whole new slab anyway. So we kind of shifted it a little bit more to the east to also improve the view line. If you look at, moving it a little bit to the east actually kind of opens up that area a little bit better, and so we can see off of Dock Street a little bit. So we're still going to have to be there, so it's just moving it a little bit further to the east. But if we wanted to put it back in the same location, we'd have to tear the slab out and then put something else in it, which costs more. So it was easier for us just to shift it a little bit.
Okay, good question, good answer. Councillor Evans?
So just to clarify, we are removing the slab that we're taking the old
Right
bathrooms
now,
off
we're
of?
leaving it in place.
What is the purpose of, what are we going to use it for?
Nothing, right? Like I say, we're just trying to save money by, it's going to cost us $10,000 to $20,000 to pull it out.
I don't think that'll look very attractive for our waterfront park.
Like
I
I
think
say,
we should,
we're trying to keep it as bare bones as possible.
well, we do, but we have to think about the aesthetics of visitors that are coming to the park to view our amazing waterfront. I think we should look at that.
Okay.
Well, if I could respond to that as well. I am here virtually, so Alex Warner, city engineer. So the last time we presented this was, we had a conversation during an ARPA funds. It was one of those items, and we got, direction from council that this project was not going to be given an additional $25,000. So in the last few weeks, we've been looking for ways to reduce the cost. And yeah, one of those cost reductions is to leave the slab in place. So we can add that back in, but that can be, something that we'll just have to see where the low bid comes in. And if it's over the $75,000 in the budget, we'll have to ask for it at the time of award in August.
Did you want to follow up, Councillor Evans?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. That's exactly what we meant. Let's keep it at 75,000, and if we need more, then come back and let's discuss it. And I think that would be something that we'd want to discuss. So thank you, I appreciate that update.
Sure.
Councillor Hoffmeyer?
Yeah, not attempting to be contrary here at all, and I think pretty much along the lines of what Councillor Evans said. The 75,000 estimate came before we decided to reduce that number from 100 to 75, and just speaking for myself, would be glad to up that number if that's what it takes to get that ugly slab out of there. Thank you.
Okay, any other, yes? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
Sorry, Mayor. I forgot to take down my hand. My apologies, please.
No problem, okay.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. Thank you.
No problem, that's all right. Councillor Wiesner?
Well, then I guess the thought would be if we're gonna take the slab out anyhow, do we wanna discuss, sight lines, we would gain, by moving it, but also there is a little bit of cost involved in moving
Yeah.
it if we're going to start with a clean slate with a slab ripped out. And then, of course, if they were in the same spot, we wouldn't have the ADA issues quite as much. We wouldn't have any,
Hey, that's-
easier access. So I guess that kind of almost sends you back to the drawing board a little bit.
We can shift around, and we kind of put it over there because we thought that would be a better sight line. If we shift in, it's an aesthetic issue, and I personally would rather see it more over there, but we could compromise because, the piping is, if we save 20 feet, it might save us a couple of grand, but.
I guess it's a way out.
It's a way out there. Like I say, we'll take a look at it.
So do your numbers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We do have to, part of it is we've got the option to connect to some areas, so the actual length, moving it in doesn't save us much length just because of the geometry.
Councillor Hoffmeyer?
Brett, would you or Alex or somebody be available for a council site visit?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Yeah, just shoot me an email. I'd love to look at it on site.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Mr. Arvidsson. Sorry I called you Alex in the beginning.
I'm a little tall.
You've just lost so much weight, I hardly saw you. Thanks again, Brett. We'll move then to our next item on the agenda, which is administration. We have an A and a B proposal to create a Parks and Rec department with director. Mr. Olborn.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Oak Harbor City Administrator Blaine Oborn here to present a proposal to create a Park and Recreation Department and a director. So if we can go to the next slide here. And if we had a Park and Rec director, I'd have that person help advocate for that position, but we don't have that. But we do have a vacancy with the Parks Manager opening, so it's an opportunity to, when you have vacancies, to look at whether you could do things differently. So we could stay on that slide, please. So it's an opportunity. Right now we have 3 divisions that are kind of separate, and they're all park and recreation oriented. And the push here is to take advantage of that vacancy, upgrade the position, and to get some synergy by combining these 3 departments, being the Parks Operation Division, the Senior Services, and the Marina all together. And right currently, 2 of the divisions, the Senior Services and the Marina, are supervised by and report to the City Administrator, and then the Parks report to the Public Works Director. So if we can go to the next slide here. Can't see here exactly, but it is in your packet here, so you can look at it a little bit better here on the org chart. You can kind of see what I was talking about here, how it's kind of blended all over the place with those 3 divisions. And if we can go to the next slide here with the proposal, it really puts together a really nice, and it flows a lot better by having a Park and Rec department, these 3 divisions there, and it makes it really comparable to the size of the other departments that have directors. So I think it certainly creates some synergy. Next slide here. One of our immediate needs that I probably overly focused on maybe a little bit, but certainly is very important, and we do have a grants manager, and we're really trying to up our game here with grants, utilizing the Harbor Master, kind of dovetailing or putting together kind of an ad hoc team here to kind of apply for grants. One of the RCO of the Recreation and Conservation Office grants. Our group is kind of putting together there with a harbor master, a project engineer, a planner, and the city administrator. Where if we had a parks director, a park and recreation director, that person would be doing that presentation all by themselves and doing that. So we'll kind of just continue to wing it if we don't move forward. But I think this is an opportunity opportunity to bring somebody forward. And the other area here is I probably could focus on more, is the combining the three divisions to really improve services, create synergy, and to coordinate with each other, and then also to coordinate better with North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation Department, and look for community collaboration. So certainly these are benefits. I know we applied for the grant for the first phase for the Harbor Heights. I don't think we applied near as much, and to be honest with you, how I decided to get additional funding, I called up a Park and Rec director and said, well, how do I do this? What do I apply for? And that Park and Rec director had that expertise and was able to help me going forward, and help the city going forward, and that's where we went ahead and expanded into 3 grants we're applying for now to deal with the cost increase, and looking for funding for another grant to go from just under $2 million project to an over $5 million project with the same contribution in both instances with the city here by leveraging grant funding. And regarding the synergy here, we've had programs in the past. I'm not going to guarantee the recreational programs. That would depend upon funding here. But I think certainly we can do a better job coordinating and taking advantage and leveraging. A lot of growth opportunities would depend upon the funding. And that was something that the good Park and Rec director can deal with. Going to the next one here, fiscal impact here. I can mention I estimated up not more than 40,000, somewhere in that range. It depends upon the grade of what we hire the new person in that position, but I'm estimating around that range. The cost, we would allocate it, and I kind of gave a proposed allocation of the position going to 4 different departments with 4 different fundings, and it's not uncommon to have that type of allocation. It's very common, very, very, very common in public works with the allocation with the number of funding that they have there. So really not an issue. We have the available funds in 2022. If you move forward, then we would budget this in 2023. And then moving on, finally here is just looking for the last slide. Is just looking for council input here, and certainly our public works director, I think he's worked under both, where Parks is under him and Parks has been with the Park and Rec director. We've talked about that going forward. I think by pulling it out, I think that gives some synergy on that park area that really needs the expertise. And then I think our public works director has plenty of other departments. Certainly, we'll continue to hobble along if there's unfavorable input and fill the position, and hopefully the third time we'll get one that really works out in the parks operation manager. I think the 2 hires that we had input from both of them that it was kind of taken on a lot more, and without having that park and recreation director, we demand a lot out of that manager level position. So as a process, if there's favorable input tonight or in future discussion here, then it would require an ordinance change creating a park and recreation director position and move the parks function specifically to that new director. And then we don't even have any reference to the senior services in our code. And then marina's kind of open-ended, but I would recommend that we codify that like we do with other departments and directors. And then this would be a director's position that would involve the council, that would be appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council, similar to our development services director position, and we would do a similar kind of recruitment. So with that, I'll appreciate your input, and I'm open to questions.
Okay, turn to council. Councillor Stuckey.
Yeah, after reading about this and hearing you, this is something I definitely think is a really neat thing. Obviously, the concern being $40,000 increase, but we get 1 grant we wouldn't have gotten. We paid for itself. I love that this open. Every town that I've lived in has always given a catalog in the mail with parks and rec activities and stuff, and this opens the door for that. My other concern was how senior services and our harbor master felt about that, and our harbor master's here, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it seemed they were overly positive about it. The only concern that I heard, which is a legitimate one, is with the marina being an enterprise fund and some of that salary coming out of that department. What's the effect on the marina as far as rates and things like that? I mean, if it's a self-sustaining fund.
We've talked about that, and I'll put words in your mouth, and Chris, you're welcome to change it, but we think it can accommodate it. It's not a huge amount of a percentage that it would have to accommodate. So, and I think as far as what it's getting in services, I think, like was said earlier, I think the marina is going to get more. I mentioned earlier the dredging. We have RCO grants. Chris already had experience with RCO grants. And that's why he was able to help out on that side. And there's certainly already a synergy. And Chris Sublett, Harbor Master, you're welcome to chime in here. Thank you.
Well, it's nice to be back at this podium. I haven't been here in a few years, so it's good to see you guys in person. As I've thought about this, and specifically the money, where that's going to come from, the marina is financially strong right now, and it can currently withhold and support that extra $40,000 a year. I think what we have to look at more so is what is the benefit to the marina, what is the benefit to the senior center, and what is the benefit to parks. I can speak specifically about the marina. I think that this is a pretty good move for the marina in a lot of different ways. As you all know, we're struggling with finding grants for our city-owned marina because there's typically not any city-owned marina grants available for the sorts of things that we want to do. By creating this department, now we're a city-owned marina, but we're part of a Parks and Recreation department, so that may carry more weight and enable us to find more grants, we're hoping. We haven't firmed that up, but we believe that to be true. I think that from a leadership role and a management role, it also helps us and strengthens our position as well, because currently, as Mr. Oborn says, I report to him, and he oversees so many different things, and not to say that he's not ever turned me away or neglected me, but I think if you have one person overlooking all three of those departments, you have one person who's focused on three things versus one person who's focused on an entire city. So I think there's benefits there as well. From a tenant point of view and from a customer point of view at the marina, I can only see benefits because of those two things, and I don't think there'll be any contention or argument or any unfavorable comments about creating this from the marina. The only thing that I would caution is what Mr. Stuckey said, is that the marina is an enterprise fund, and those funds need to stay in an enterprise fund and not move into a fund where they support parks or the senior center. I think the Marina Advisory Committee is really going to be keen on keeping that on that level as well.
That's all I got. I like the idea, and I'm for it.
Councillor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mr. Oborn, as you know, I'm pretty excited about this. I've been, I think, pestering you about this for a couple of years, and the mayor and I first started talking about this about 3 years ago, if I remember correctly. And I'm just going to, reiterate some of the things I've said to you. I remember a time in the city of Oak Harbor when we had tennis lessons and basketball lessons and all sorts of stuff, arts and crafts going on down at our city parks, and they were put on by our parks department, I think it was $10 for me to go to arts and crafts class. Obviously it didn't take, but the reality is, I see this as a huge opportunity to bring all the city has to offer, including the marina, into this and make that marina part of that recreation division and make the senior center and all that they're doing for our seniors, because the seniors deserve recreation just as much as the kids in our town do, right? And to kind of bring that all together, like Councilmember Stuckey said, a catalog, right? Having a catalog, here's what's going on this summer, in Parks and Recreation in the city of Oak Harbor. I think we were asking a lot out of our parks folks. We had somebody, let's face it, taking care of all the parks and sprinkler systems and, bridges and all the things, in a park, that's a full-time job in itself. And then trying to, work together with what we've already got going on in the city and just making it better and enhancing it, another full-time job. And no offense, Steve, but I'm sure you would like to maybe be able to concentrate on the infrastructure part of the package you know, which is also a big, big deal. Streets and curbs and gutters and, you know, sewer, and, you know, we've got, you know, massive projects coming up with water line replacements and slip lining of storm drains and et cetera. And, you know, that's you know, where your efforts probably ought to be. And to have somebody that's going to, it's going to be their role to create that recreation within our community. We have all this to offer, but, you know, we're just underutilizing it. So excited about it. There's going to be some growing pains through it, but, you know, I think this is just a natural step as the city gets bigger and bigger and bigger. This is just, you know, one of those things that again, we've been discussing for quite some time, and I think that the timing's right, and the fact that, you know, this person then will also be focused on grants that are going to help facilitate the recreation in our community is just, you know, a huge enhancement, because obviously the position can end up more than paying for itself through that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiesner. I'll go to Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Wiesner just spoke to what my concern is and I think this is a good idea in general. I mean, I like the idea. I too remember the time when we could do community activities and you know, there were things to do for the kids. My concern is that we've been struggling to find a full-time parks director, and now we're going to not only take that position, but add more on. And what I believe I heard you say, Mr. O'Born, is that the previous two directors felt like it was already a lot. Now we're going to pile on more on top of them. In reading through some of the morale surveys and such that were done last October, it seems to be staffing was a concern, you know, and I think that was what was mentioned by Parks, you know, by the previous directors, was that lack of staffing was a concern. And so my concern is that we're going to create a director level position or administrative level position, and we're still not going to have the staffing below that in order to do the job that needs to be done, you know. First and foremost, we need parks. Parks needs to be taken care of. And so my concern with this position, and I'm not against the position in any way, shape, or form, but can that person do the job of parks and these additional things that we're going to task on them with the staff that we have, or are we looking at having to hire additional staff as well?
We may in the future have to hire additional staff. You already mentioned that. The Parks always lets me know that, you know, they lost a position in the recession and we've never been able to afford it back. Regarding the position of the individuals, it was more of the issue that they had to take on the extra duties at the manager level as opposed to being the director level there. So rather than capacity. So I think the capacity's there to deal with the question, but but now we'll have the pay and the position and the expertise that we're looking for that fits what we really do, because really we've been expecting the parks manager to be a director, unfortunately kind of a de facto director. We had a great person for 30 years that kind of grew into that position and did an awesome job. A lot of times it's not uncommon, I've seen it before, where you end up, somebody's so efficient, they've been there for so long that it takes two people to fill that position. I'm not saying that this is exactly the example, but sometimes you have to reorganize, and we kind of tried it as, I think I seriously considered it throughout the idea before, and I think it predates me. This park recreation, a lot of other departments, Anacortes went to a park and rec department. A lot of them don't even have the marina that we have with the park and rec, and just went by itself. Nice video on YouTube there about a city that didn't even have a park director or really any parks, and kind of a newer city, and how he kind of built it from scratch and did that. So I think there's some basis to build it upon, but certainly it needs more opportunity. Right now we have a director as an equivalent as to a chief that's advocating for a referendum. I think if we really want to get parks funded, then we have to look at where the source is and see whether the community wants to do that. I think having a director will really help that. I'm not going to say everything's going to fall apart. We'll continue to run it the best way we can, but I really think we can build some synergy and move in a different direction. But it's certainly a policy decision of the council, and we've got this opportunity to kind of throw this proposal at you, or to go back and see if for the third time works. May even have to consider upgrading that position a little bit to get it comparison to the expertise and the position we have now. And I think by having that director position really does that. As far as the other departments, I mean, senior services and harbor master marina, we have some very seasoned people that know how to run that and don't require a lot of expertise. And I think the Marina Advisory Committee, I kind of put a proposal here, but that allocation may be allocated down a little bit as we look at what kind of time involved in this. And I think what was said is this is kind of growing pains. I mean, we're just kind of natural evolution, and we'll just kind of adjust it as we kind of go along.
Thank you for that. Do you anticipate that we'll need to hire additional park staff then? Either way, it sounds like Parks has been understaffed, or they lost a position during the recession. Are we going to be looking to replace that position at any time?
Replace what? Oh,
the labor position for Parks.
We've had it in the budget, the 2-year cycles that I went through every time, and it's never had the funding in it. And the bottom line, it never will have the funding in my expertise unless we find additional revenue sources on it, i.e. grant funding or a referendum or other sources. And so I think it's a great task of the Park and Rec Director. And so I think our fire chief kind of knows that he needed more bodies in the fire department. But, if the pie is only so big, and so I can't turn around and give somebody else a larger piece unless I cut somebody else, and that's been the dilemma. And I don't see us ever being able to bring back that additional person without really getting innovative and looking for other sources and funding. And so a lot of programs you talked about, they pay for themselves. It's not common for having an activities person that basically they run activities, but they need to pay for their salary in those activities. And that's the kind of thing we would do, is when we would bring, the only way I'm going to make it work is I can't just bring expenditures. I got to bring revenue source to you at the same time to make it feasible.
And I think, as we discussed earlier, my biggest concern would be sustainable revenue sources as opposed to just grants, and that it kind of is described as this person is going to be going after grants. We want them to apply for grants, and nowhere did I see, well, this will be a program that we will establish that will then generate revenue for the next 5 years, and so in establishing this position, that's what I would be looking for is what kind of deliverables can we get that are going to be continuous sources of revenues, as opposed to let's apply for a grant and hope that we get that.
So that's, if we go in this direction, this is the avenue I'm going to task the Park and Rec Director. And so, all my other department heads know that they come to me for, we gotta look at both sides. We gotta look at the expenditure and the revenue side to do that. And I think there's a lot of synergy to do that. And a referendum, we could have put it into the parks budget, into the fire referendum. Some cities combine them. We just thought it would be easier to run that by itself and less confusing for the public to just run it by that. But certainly there's opportunities. Unfortunately, we know with the IMAN restriction of just 1% per year, it's just really hard. Our budget, basically with 2% inflation, we ended up, our dollar value goes down 1% per year. And so that's why we've been able to look at TBD with the sales tax and other opportunities. That's why we're looking at the referendum here for fire. So we've got to look at those other areas there. And I think by having a Park and Rec Director and that expertise and that working with other cities will really create some synergy. I know personally when we were doing the youth athletic field grant, we kind of didn't know who to send down to lobby for it because we didn't have a Park and Rec Director. Didn't really fit into the city administrator, didn't really fit into the to the development, to the park and the public works director, didn't really fit into the parks manager. And so I'm kind of a jack of all trades, charade. So I was the one that kind of went down there, but I go down there and then I'm working with park and rec directors who are really expertise, a lot more savvier than I have. And I think that was what really hooked me on that idea and really the benefit we have of doing the park and rec. And I think even on the North Whidbey in that example, I mean, they've had directors before that really weren't park and rec directed, and they've got a park and rec director now that's really taken them to new levels. And so I think we'll get that kind of return also.
I'm going to go to Councillor Heisen. I see you've got your hand up, Councillor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Oborn. I really like this idea. This has been floated in the 10 years that I've been here. It's been floated several times. And I think that being between hiring of the positions right now is probably a good time to implement this and see if it works. I do have a couple of questions. I'm looking at the org chart. And the harbor master and the senior services director have always been considered department heads in their own right. And looking at the organizational chart, it appears that they would be under the Parks and Rec director. Is that the case? Would they be answering to the Parks and Rec director, or would they still be considered their own department heads?
They were divisions, and at one time, both them reported to the development services director. And then at one point, it was decided that it would be more efficient to move the senior services out of the development service center, out of development services director to the city administrator. And then I kind of was planning for this coming forward, and I knew I had a new development services director coming on, so I did not want to task him for being in charge of the marina, so I took that on. It made it easily for me to put this back into a department here. So that's why we kind of evolved around here. But when they were in under a director for development services, both those departments were not departments, they were divisions.
Okay, so this wouldn't necessarily be they wouldn't be demoted.
No,
lack of a better
no, and I think there's more opportunity for them to work on that, and I think was our harbor master talked about the synergy there, and there's also room for them advancing. I think both of these individuals could possibly someday be a park and rec director, and if they want to apply, I certainly welcome them to apply. If we get the approval to go forward, I think we want to do a full full recruiting and really go out and look out there. And I know council's always demanded that we really be competitive, and we would have 2 to 3 council members involved in the process like we did before, and treat this as a full director position and have really take it seriously. And I think pay rise is would be about what the development services director position would, and actually has more employees than the development service department has. So that's about where I'm tiering it, and working with our HR director. That's where we felt it fits well into our organization, is pretty comparable to other cities, and I think it'll be competitive wage, and I think we'll get a lot of interest in this position. I think we'll get a lot more than if we went with the status quo with the parks manager position here, and so I think we can really bring in somebody with some expertise, and I know we've really had some good hires here with development services, with our public works director and our finance director, and really bringing some great synergy in. And with this position, I expect and want the same results of really upping our game and really creating some synergy.
I agree. I think that there's a lot of potential here. Even as a council person, over the years, sometimes I'll have a question or an issue, and I wouldn't necessarily know whether to contact Public Works or Development Services, or who is the person to ask. And so I think putting all the Parks and Rec under one umbrella makes a lot of sense. I think that the potential to work with the park or consolidate like the Park Board, the Arts Commission, the Marine Advisory Committee, there's a lot of potential to really utilize what I think is our city's greatest asset, and that is our parks and our location and the potential for recreation. So I definitely support the idea. I am curious about whether or not the city has the logistical infrastructure to kind of support a whole new division. I mean, like, just where would this new position physically be located in the city? You know, I have some kind of logistical questions, but I'm sure that we can figure that out as we go. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. We have half an annex at Public Works that's vacant right now, and that's where I would put that position in. Certainly, it would be subject to further review, but that's kind of my preliminary assessment on it. And then we would certainly look at other opportunities over time evolving here. But right to start off, that's probably my best guess of where I utilize that vacant space and put the Park and Rec director there.
Okay, yeah, that all sounds good. I'm excited to see how this progresses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heisen. Go to Mayor Pro Tem Munns. I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll try to remember to take it down, or you can remind me at the end. This does sound very exciting, and it would put us in a different category in order to apply for grants. But I thought we hired a grant writer that's situated in Public Works to work on capital type of projects. The other concern I have, a big one with Mr. Marshall, is that Hank Needham, when he was the director of parks, he would get out there with a backhoe, or he'd be weeding, and I can't see this director doing that. So if he's going to be a manager and mainly just do grants, then you're going to need at least 2 more people for the Parks Department to be able to get all the work done, or we're not going to be able to maintain anything or a new structure like the windmill. So I am really, really concerned about that. I'm excited about the opportunity to get in other grants and to work with our recreation. In fact, I believe the recreation, 1985 was the last time my 5-year-old son, who's 42, did the rec program. Eric Gerber, I believe, was running that, but the city just didn't have enough manpower or money to keep offering a children's rec program during the summer. So this person is supposed to be doing a summer rec program for children. And I might add, for the marina, you have Oak Harbor Youth Sailing, which is a nonprofit that offers sailing lessons and stuff like that for kids. So unless you can think of another activity for the marina, that's already covered as far as recreation. You've got that, and then you need someone that's directing your parks on grass and fertilizer and stuff like that, and when to water, when to not, and a rotation, doing a plan on what parks are cut when, and this and that, and then you've got to examine the playgrounds, and I mean, so this person who's the director is going to be doing this, and yet we used to have a director of parks who could physically do part of the labor plus manage that. He's also the person that would get, usually in January, all the people we rent recreational space to, the Little League and the Frisbee golf teams, and now the Senior Center has pickleball court things, and there's soccer and all of that. Plus he's writing grants. I can see that person do it if they're only doing that and they just have reports from people, but you're going to have to get some more staff. At least, glaringly, is the parks. Liz Lang runs a good system and has good programs, and she's got 3 people, and the marina staff, I'm sure they could use one more full-time person with everything that they have to repair and and helping rendezvous come in. That's a moneymaker, and stuff like that. I just, it's a great idea, and how to bring in some other things and to work with other, but you got to come up with more money somehow. So anyway, think about it, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think we go to Councillor Hoffmeyer.
Yeah, I think we've been working in a circle here, but, I was a little undecided on this issue coming into it. I wanted to hear the whole vision. And, having the three divisions, come into one, the upcoming capital projects that we have, the added synergy that you talked about, coordinating and collaborating with North Whidbey Pool Park and Rec. Lastly, they're having 15 full-time equivalent employees under them. Hank Neidham was incredible. I remember sitting in here when he got his 30-year or his 36-year Polar Fleece. I can't even remember which it was at the time. But he retired. And I think since then we have learned that this is more than just a parks manager position. Since you brought up NWPPRD, and in my 2 terms on the board there, and while being board chair, we decided that, this director position needs to increase about the same amount of money that we're talking here. And, in my 20 years in and out of that building, I had never seen a grant be received. I don't even know if a grant was ever applied for. But within 18 months of bringing in a lifelong professional in Parks and Rec, the district has brought in 2 $250,000 grants, and I know the director there's thinking much bigger and better things, and ultimately that positions you better for voter referendums, et cetera, for getting these capital projects off the ground like they need to be. My experience has been that the added expertise, the added professionalism, it creates efficiencies throughout the department that really help the revenue become very sustainable. Things have went really good there, and I think the reason that happened is because that position was upgraded to bring in somebody appropriately. And I would assume you would do the same thing, but the quality level of the applicants, by advertising through NRPA, through the National Recreation and Park Association, absolutely incredible. The difference it has made. So being able to hear your whole vision and hear that you want to work with NWPPRD, knowing that yourself and the mayor, knowing how much you guys firmly believe in partnerships within government agencies, and how much money that can save in turn, I certainly am in support of this at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hoffmeyer. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Evans.
It's already been said by a couple of council members, but reading through all this information, it really does focus so much on grants. And I've said it numerous times, the mindset needs to change to revenue. We got to start coming up with revenue. And that revenue can include things for people to do. If we have something that's fun to do, that is enough fun, people will pay to do it. And we're not looking that way. We're looking for the free money, for the quick fix, and that is not sustainable. And I just really think that we need to change the mindset. We also have more parks than about any city our size. We can't even afford to maintain the parks that we have. So I think that's something that we also need to address. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We've got some great input, in my estimation, and some great questions. I think that park staffing is something we have to consider and take a very hard look at. I mean, we've got a great parks department, and they have a lot to do. We do know that. So, can that efficiency, I mean, they've and Hank Neidham, oh my goodness, started, there, worked so many years, and was really an icon. And as Mayor Pro Tem said, he spent a fair amount of his day, on a lot of days, out there working right along with them. So, it's a challenge going forward that we have to analyze, and I think that we've got some great input here and some great things to look at and work together on. So really appreciate that. Any other questions or input about that at this point? Okay, seeing none, we'll move then to the city administrator report, part of this.
All right, I'm already warmed up here, so having a previous item, so I'm going to go really quickly in the interest of time and really just focus on parks and public works items here. Just want to, in here, we give notice to the council that the Rural County Economic Development Grant for a proposed Harbor Heights West Access Road was kind of pocket vetoed by the county commissioner, so that grant was effectively denied. They were pretty open to coming back again and applying, and so and we kind of did that with the marina grant for we got turned down the first year and brought it back again, and they were more receptive the second year. So we'll look at that next year here. One of the things that's not on the report that I just sent out an email here and probably should have been in here, and we apologize for that. We want to kind of keep you updated on everything, was the Flintstone dock was delayed installation here. They had some issues with the dock and didn't make that season of April, and so they're looking for hopefully a high tide to float it over from the marina, and there's already some synergy between parks and marina going on, working together on, so it's not going in like it normally does in April, and hopefully they'll get it in July. Mid-July is kind of the target date that it looks like the tides will facilitate that installation of that. So with that, those are just the few items that I had.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oborn. Councillor Wiesner.
Just one question for you, Mr. Oborn, and this is more to show you that somebody actually reads this stuff you put together, and it is appreciated. It's very detailed, and I actually like to compare the numbers from one to the next, but 40 hours of snow removal and sanding. What was that? That's obviously a...
That's on that logicity, yeah.
Yeah.
We can follow up on that one.
Could you get back to me? Because that stood out as something that's probably wrongly categorized. And I see we already have 45 hours for street sweeping, because I thought maybe that street sweeping ended up there, but we've got that down below.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that with an email to the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
You missed the snow.
I must have missed something.
Great questions. Hey, great questions. Thank you. Okay, there is no other than actually city council business at this point that I know of to do, so we'll just move to the executive session. At this time, the council will take a brief recess, move into executive session for the purpose of discussing litigation or potential litigation with legal counsel. The session is anticipated to last for 40 minutes. As noticed on our agenda, action may or may not be taken upon return to the open session. Executive sessions are not open to the public. So at this time, we'll be going into session for 40 minutes, we anticipate.
No, because it's not ready.
The council has announced that they will need an additional 20 minutes in executive session. The council executive session will continue for an additional 20 minutes beyond the 4:57 mark. Thank you. Good afternoon. The council has indicated that they will remain in executive session for an additional 15 minutes. Thank you.
So I'd like to reconvene this workshop meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council that started at 2 o'clock this afternoon, and it is now 5:32. We have been in executive session for the last, I don't know how many minutes. Started 40, added 20, and another 15, I think. So anyway, no action was taken during that session, and I believe we have no action at this point. No further business.
I move to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Let's say aye, let's go. Okay. That passes unanimously.